Hi, this is Ricardo Diaz welcoming you once again for Immigration Forum TV and thanking you for your time, for your willingness to sit down with us and listen to immigration issues, why they should be at the federal level, what's going on at the state and at the local level. And this week especially, things have come up on the local level to influence the Congress at the federal level. So we'll lead up to that topic, but to introduce our guest is the mayor of Urbana, Laurel Pressig. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure.
Talk about immigration, but I realized as I was talking to you right before this, we've been in town 5 or 6 years, have gotten to know you, we've crossed paths and in events and stuff, but I don't know much about you. Are you a local?
No, I immigrated to Urbana.
Oh, there you go.
So I was born in New York City, and my parents moved to Seattle, so I grew up in Seattle.
Okay.
And then went to school in Massachusetts, met my husband there, and we went to California for 2 years, and then we moved to Urbana. So I've been back and forth across the country. But Senator Durbin was talking to the mayors in Illinois, the Illinois Municipal League, about the immigration bill, and then this letter came up. So I was very happy to sign it because I think this is a nation of immigrants, and all the people here, including the Native Americans, came from somewhere else, although that was so long ago that we don't know exactly where. But my mother was born in Italy, and she came here when she was 13 years old. And her parents, she came here legally on a ship. They went to France first, and she worked in a women's hat shop sewing hat bands on women's hats.
Really?
You know, yeah, and so when she grew up in Princeton, New Jersey after that, and went to college in New Jersey, which was very unusual for a woman in the 1930s.
Especially an immigrant woman.
Yeah,
one that didn't
right.
have
So immigrant kids, she was kind of against bilingual education because she got thrown into English speaking and felt that was the best way for kids to learn. So I would have little discussions with her about that one. But anyway, my grandparents never learned how to speak English, but my mother was a college graduate.
Okay.
My father's family goes way back to the 1600s in Massachusetts when Henry Lunt came from England. I think there were religious refugees at that point to come to this country. So people have come here for a number of reasons. And Urbana has a sister city in Malawi, Africa. We also have a sister city in China. And of course we had huge involuntary immigration from Africa. And we had many Chinese people come in the 19th century, and they built our railroads. And one of my favorite books is called China Men by Maxine Hong Kingston. And it's about her ancestors building the railroads in California. And a lot of immigrants were treated very shabbily by the people that were already here, which is kind of ironic because we're all immigrants.
It's always,
but you know, like no Irish need apply or whatever. But I gave a police lieutenant who's in our sister city in China, Maxine Hong Kingston's book, China Men, because it's about immigration and it's about people's struggles and everything. So I don't know if she's read it or not, but it's one of my favorite books.
There you go. Well, we'll have to recommend to put it on the screen so people can just click and buy. But now you're talking, when you mention your religious refugees, in essence then, from on your mother's side, then they would be economic refugees because most everyone that came from Italy was because they were very poor over there, and this was a chance at coming, and so they came to well,
people had to have sponsors, and apparently, you know, it's very typical that people go to a group that's already come from their country because somebody comes here and then they write back home, and then their friends and family start coming. So they were apparently sponsored by somebody in Princeton, New Jersey, and they lived in Princeton, New Jersey. And my grandfather had been a painter in Italy doing frescoes, and so then when he got to the United States, he became a house painter, and he took my uncle out of school pretty early because my uncle could speak English and my grandfather couldn't. So, you know, there was one kid's education shot, but my mother not only graduated from high school, but went on to college.
Yeah. Again, not so unusual for the kids to act as interpreters of their parents, and then making that investment on another kid of the family. And that one was from Italy, I imagine, in the 20s, the 30s?
1920s.
Yeah, 1920s, when Italians were not so desired either as
well,
refugees.
I don't remember them talking about being discriminated against, because I think they went into a welcoming community because they'd been sponsored. And the people who lived on the street were a lot of Italians. So that's how people, you know, and we have a friend who is a mathematician at the University of Illinois, and he grew up in Chicago. I think it was maybe a Hungarian community. I hope I have the nationality correct. But he never even heard English until he went to kindergarten, because there'd be these neighborhoods in big cities where everybody spoke the language of the home country.
Yes. South Philly is still very Italian, and there's lots of people that still know. Actually, they don't even speak Italian. They bring their dialect from Italy and bring that as Italians, but then to communicate with Italians in Italian, there's a little gap there because it was never standard.
Different dialect.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yesterday at church, there was a woman that stood up and talked about the naturalization ceremony this last weekend. I didn't realize that there were actually two, one on Friday, one on Saturday. But she was, I never knew that their family was going through it. But she said, I went and it was so emotional, and I realized how few people actually get to do this. In her group, there were like 30 people. And how privileged of a status is to be able to get to the part of naturalizing. And it's true. We're looking for people to naturalize right now, the Immigration Forum. And we have a goal, I think, of about 500 outreach, and it's hard to find that many people, even though we know there are thousands of LPRs, legal permanent residents in the area. People shifting over to becoming fully American they're not easy to find.
Well, I know that there's internal migration, and there's no problem here in this country because you can move to any state that you want to. But in China, I talked with the police lieutenant from Guangzhou in our sister city, and she said that over half the population in these major Chinese cities are from other provinces, and they don't have the same legal rights as the people who live in that city and were born in that city. So it's a huge issue in China, and the Communist Party is, you know, starting to come to grips with it, because how can you have two sets of people? But we have it with legal and illegal immigrants. That's our two sets of people. But we don't have the huge problem that they have in China.
Because we have free internal migration, basically.
Right,
we don't have anything else. Actually, I meant to ask you about that, too. So recently, I saw an article in which Atlanta became, or wanted to be designated as an immigrant-friendly city. And so they've started to put in some local laws to attract more immigrants. But it reminded me that Indianapolis has put up its website to say we're an immigrant-friendly city, and they've structured a little bit of city government, but basically put it onto the not-for-profits. Chicago, Adolfo Hernandez, who is the head of the mayor's office, New American office, or Welcoming Americans into Chicago, something like that. But he said, we want to be the most immigrant-friendly city, period, in the world. South of us, St. Louis has put up its own website to say, no, we want to be immigrant friendly, and they've put up their display of what services they offer immigrants. But things were really started about 3 or 4 years ago by Dayton, Ohio, who said, we want to be immigrant friendly. They've set up a little bit of a law change, but most importantly, they designated one person to try to do that. And they've had a massive influx of Turkish people that were living all over the U.S. and are now settling and filling up and buying up the old houses, the rundown area that was once unpleasant Dayton, to now be Turkish Dayton.
So they're not getting people from Turkey now, but from other parts of the United States?
From other parts, and as
they
you know...
probably would get both, right?
That's right. So
yeah.
the chain migration would eventually
right.
link up directly to Turkey. But I thought to myself, isn't it interesting that at least around us, the major cities are designating themselves and changing in different ways the structure to try to attract immigrants. Dayton set it up as a city government, and so did Chicago. St. Louis, I'm not sure, but Indianapolis did it in such a way that they said, this is what we can offer, but then a not-for-profit was formed to do the legwork, you know, of it. San Francisco, Detroit has, they want very particular immigrants with a visa, with an entrepreneurial visa, the EB visas. But basically, if you can bring in work for 10 people, the federal government will give you permanent residency. And so that usually means, I think, $750,000 to invest. Then the federal government will kick in the visa status for that person. And so anyway, there are different ways of creating an immigrant-friendly city, but it's popping up around us. And in Immigration Forum, we've often talked about how do we make it. We've never approached the city council or anything. But the little things that we're doing, hopefully, will create that kind of environment.
Well, I think that historically we've been immigrant-friendly because the university brings people from all over the world.
Yeah.
And like the first Chinese graduate student was in the early 20th century. I think it was 1911. So we have a very long history of drawing people from around the world. But I wonder if New York is still the major center for immigration for the United States. Do you think it still is?
Well, it is one of the gateways. Yeah.
Which is the biggest? Is it still New York, or would it be
No,
Los Angeles?
I think New York, as a percentage of the population, the foreign-born is quite high.
Yeah.
What's been interesting in the last few years has been that, and I usually have a map where I show the percentage of foreign-born per county across the U.S.
Okay.
So L.A., a lot of Central Americans, besides the natural Mexican migration, because it's so close, there's a lot of Central Americans, and then the Asian populations. So the L.A. area, the county surrounding L.A. County. And then in New York, obviously then there's also collar, suburbs that have also become high percentage foreign-born, is the way the census measures it. So there is. Chicago has gone from, I'd never seen that happen. Chicago has gone from having a couple of, the downtown, the mid of Chicago being very high foreign-born population, and then just expanding in the circles of it. And the way the maps show it basically is only the origin country has changed. The percentage has kept itself at a, between 5 and 10 in some of those counties, but it used to be, Eastern Europe, Southern Europe. Most recently it's gone to Asian and Latin American. But even that, the Mexican has stayed pretty much at its own level. Now it's other Latin Americans coming into Chicago area. Here, I haven't kept track of it as much. So
there's all kinds of nationalities here. I got invited to a celebration by the Laotian community.
Really?
Yeah, so I would like to be able to just have a list of what all the groups are. But I have to fit that in with all the other things I'm supposed to be working on at the moment.
Well, maybe we can work on it.
Yeah, I think, because if you didn't know there was a Laotian group, we should probably, if you're the Immigration Forum, we should actually list the countries and the organizations.
Yeah, we should. That would be very nice, because we've worked with Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, Mexican, Guatemalan, and then the different, a little bit with all the other Latin American countries.
Well, a long time ago.
Congo, obviously.
Yeah, Congo. And a long time ago, Urbana said it was a city of refuge. And so we thought we were going to get Guatemalan refugees, and I'm sure we did get some, but we got Indiana legislators.
Oh, yeah, I remember
They came over they were having some battle in the legislature, so they came over and stayed in Urbana.
Yeah.
But I think just a list of the organizations. What I'd like to do is a history. Also, have each group write their history, like who was the first person or the first group, and why did they come here?
That would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It used to be
actually,
Koreans were the huge majority because the Korean government wanted students to come and study in the United States. And now, of course, that things have opened up more with China. The Chinese students
Yeah.
are, and China is a much bigger country than Korea, so it's not surprising. But
that their numbers.
There-
The
there are-
Brazilian population has
Oh,
gone
sure,
up with
yeah.
the new Lehman Center
Yeah.
on campus. It has created a magnet for.
yeah, we were going to have a Brazilian sister city, but I sort of need a council member that's going to take that and run with it. So we haven't gotten that one yet, but
That would be
we
good
are
too.
connected with the rest of the world.
Well, and
mostly
more
through
recently, then the
university.
Russians came in February, and we've started to make connections with.
We've always had connections to Russia. You know, there's always been exchanges of people. I went to Russia with People to People a long time ago, and went to St. Petersburg when they were just starting to call it St. Petersburg.
Is
This was
that
the
when
last days of Gorbachev?
Yeah. Is that when also Pat Connolly went through with chief of police through it?
No, I
don't
think
know.
he went in a different mission, but it's very funny because we have a lot of connections. I met somebody up at the Chinese National Day, and he was from the Ukraine, so I came and talked to Pat Connolly because this guy was interested in Pat Connolly. He says, oh, we already have a connection with the Ukraine. So
Good.
we had some Germans come. My Chinese advisor, Ping Chen, who works at Eastern Illinois University, got some German, their equivalent of the FBI. They were going to go on a tour here, so we brought them, and our police department took them around. But we have connections with a lot of parts of the world.
Yeah.
And a French lawyer met with me and Dennis Roberts about having a French sister city. But we're a very small city, so we don't have the staff to kind
Yeah.
of maintain these things. So we need an individual who's going to take it and run with it and do the organizing.
That's already in city government.
Yeah,
and
or
involved
just
in-
a citizen.
Oh,
too.
so
Yeah.
if in the
If you want to
public
do
there
the
was-
French one, you can.
Oh,
No, you're
well, there
probably
you
too
go.
busy already.
Well, I'm quite busy. I wouldn't do the French one, but I have thought through the Immigration Forum to have people. So we have immigrants from Guatemala, we have from Mexico, we have from, let's say, Laos. Why not organize little trips of citizens of Urbana to go visit where people come from? This is
Well, that's
especially-
what Sister Cities is all about.
That's right. But this would be especially handy for those families that are undocumented because the adults can't travel, the kids can travel usually. The kids are U.S. born, they've been here a long time, you know, but if the parents have either gone out of status, they came with a visa, student or otherwise, or they walked or got shipped, you know, in a container, whatever, if they come here and they don't have their full papers, until we have immigration reform, those parents are stuck. There was one lady, I just saw her picture. She said, "It's been 20 years since I've seen my parents," and I thought, "Wow, that's just way over. I can't even, you know, relate to how hard that would be." But if we took adults
Children.
from here and visited the families over there, then we have a very natural connection, you know, designated or not. It just becomes like, oh, you guys are here and over there, and now I see why you left. Or actually, some of the Mexicans that I know from Puebla, it's hard to look at when you go to their villages and it's lush and beautiful and quaint and whatever else, the groves, and I thought, why would you want to leave? And so then I had questions for my friends over here, why they would leave such a beautiful villages and next to the volcano. And anyway,
Next to the volcano might explain
well,
part
that
of
might
it.
explain part of it. But no, you know, the volcanoes were safe enough. What they told me was,
Poverty.
we can raise 2 crops a year and we can't even cover our basic needs.
Right. You
Poverty.
can't survive.
Yeah. And that was
Well,
really hard to
that's
see.
what people came for.
Yeah. A lot of
The
people come
Irish
for that.
came because of the potato famine, and a lot of people came. I mean, there was huge immigration from Scandinavian countries to Seattle. So it's, you know, one of these things. But usually there was an economic problem at home,
Yeah.
and they couldn't survive, and so that's why they wanted to go to the land of opportunity.
Yeah. And Urbana is the land of opportunity for many people. I wanted to come back to the letter that you signed a couple of weeks back, because it was, for me, a bolstering of the immigrant-friendly attitude that I found in this town. I have found so few people that are what we would call anti-immigrant or nativist or whatever else. People here have been supportive to Immigration Forum, many of the actions. And so, yes, it comes up to political, but in the day-to-day, people have been so helpful.
Well, this is an international city. We're very small, but we're an international city.
Yeah.
And when we went to Guangzhou, which used to be called in European circles Canton, a lot of Chinese immigrants came from Canton because that was the city that was designated by the emperor as the trade city. So,
So they would
when
come
we
from
went there,
Urbana?
no. I was just saying that city
US.
was U.S. immigration from that part of China because that was opened. But I went and talked, I said Guangzhou is a large international city and Urbana is a small international city. And they laughed because we're much smaller than they are. But I said it's because of the university. And so that's why we have this openness, because we're used to people coming here from all over the world.
Yeah.
And of course, most of the people in Urbana were born someplace else.
It's
We have
true.
our native people.
Even the university
Yeah.
then brings the internal migration
Right,
too.
right.
Yeah, yeah, it does. So I wanted to play this clip. I don't know if we can put it on screen. So this ended up to be more about me than I would have wanted it, but I like the intro, and then I'll skip to the letter itself. Because I think it's significant. I don't think
Okay.
people paid enough attention to the fact that you signed this letter that, for me, puts it on paper. Oh, they put in an ad, so we'll pause for that. The letter itself.
I think this was initiated by Chicago. Who initiated it?
Well, I know Durban was.
Yeah, Durban was kind of the impetus for it, because I was, So, anyway, a lot of mayors here from Illinois
Yeah,
signed it.
It was.
It was kind of a
18.
narrow focus about how it brings economic development, but my major feeling was it's about basic human rights. And also the richness that we get from other cultures. I mean, people have been traveling to other countries for thousands and thousands of years, and it's because they learn things from each other. The Silk Road, the trade between China and Italy, and places in between. There's a lot of places in between.
Yeah. And it's actually just
So
part
people-
of human nature then.
Explorers
Yeah.
and traders, and you find things that were made by Arabs in ancient burial sites for Vikings. People did go long distances and find out about very strange lands and different kinds of people, but I don't know how they communicated. How do you talk?
They
But-
sent somebody, I would think. So the city of Peoria, Mayor of Joliet, Normal, Orland Park. I mean, it's just like Champaign, Chicago, Cicero, Fairmont City. I like the way it ends.
Urbana.
Urbana.
We're on page 2 here.
You're on page
I'm at
2
the
of the
top of
signatures.
page 2.
That's good.
Yeah, and then Bloomington and just a lot of places.
Yeah, a lot of places. Our country was careening towards default, and leaders from both parties and both chambers came together to do the right thing. Let's take the opportunity to form another coalition to come together, heal our economy, and grant those who followed in the footsteps of many of our own immigrant parents a legal path to remain here and provide a better life for their children. It ends. It's addressed to the congressman to support immigration reform, that it has to be done.
I think it does.
So hopefully that will happen. The House is looking like it might reconsider its stance of not moving anything forward.
Well, sooner or later.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen now, it'll happen later. It's like many other social movements. You try and you fail, and you just keep trying and trying.
Yeah.
That's my theory of politics. You have to have the mentality of a little mosquito trying to get through the screen door. Just keep batting your little head until you find an opening big enough to squeeze through. So it'll happen. If it gets done in the Senate, maybe the House will change, or people will understand that that's an important thing for this country.
Well, I sure hope so.
So
I sure hope so. We're running out of time, so just to think about the whole immigration question, I want to tell you that I appreciate and thank you for the very direct support in a letter as we go back to the congressman and tell them this is what the people want and this is what the leaders of our communities want. And so it is very much an instrument for us to say we're not crazy. We're not a crazy mosquito coming in here.
This is what the country was built with.
Yeah.
And
that
everybody had a better life because they could come here. And we want the rest of the world to do well also.
Yeah.
But people that are here, we want them to fully participate.
Yeah. And that we couldn't agree more. So we'll come back and talk about the other populations and see if we can systematize that in some way.
Get a list.
Okay. Excellent. Well, you've been listening to CU Immigration Forum TV. The mayor of Urbana has been with us today, and so we want to thank her and come to the next segment and learn a little bit more about the immigration issue locally, statewide, and at the federal level where the change needs to happen now. Thank you very much.